If you want to learn, you have to first listen.
Welcome to episode 4 of Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, a podcast to feed our curious minds. I'm Matt O'Donnell, and I want to know who you are. I want to know what you do. I want to know why bartenders take such joy in slapping the mint. I want to know what matters to you and why. I've spent the past 15 years as a professional bass player. That means I've covered a lot of miles and talked with a lot of people. I've found that the person deeply interested in a topic is often more interesting than the topic itself, and the bigger picture is found in the details. That makes for a fantastic excuse to share conversations with people that I think are great. This time around, my guest is going to be Molly Martin, the founder of Juniper Green, a catering and events company here in Nashville. So as I've been figuring out this podcasting thing, I know, this podcast is really great, right? But, it's shocking that you would think that I'm still figuring it out, but there are definitely always things. There are a lot of podcasts out there that are relying on like notes and an outline to really guide their discussions along. I don't do that. Not that I'm not keeping a little bit of note to make sure that I don't forget things that I want to talk about, but I think it would be a little disingenuous of me to start off the podcast by talking about how I've found that people who are interested in a topic are more interesting than the topic itself, and then ending with the best answer to a question is usually another question, and also trying to push some sort of rigorous, direction of the conversation. I think that same sentiment plays on one of my core both strengths and absurdities, which is an ease to tangenting away from a subject. Happens to me all the time. It's wild. But I think I may have kind of met my match in talking to Molly. But if there was anyone that I really had to do it with, I'm really glad that it was her, and I'll tell you why. I had been aware of Juniper Green for some time via their connection to the Old School Farm, which is a little ways outside of Nashville and is now a venue that they operate. When my wife Amanda and I were planning our wedding, food was one of the utmost things that we had to get right. And kind of the only name that really came up in that process was Molly and Juniper Green. We ended up doing our rehearsal dinner at the Old School and also having them cater the wedding itself. Juniper Green exudes a high quality in both their food and hospitality, so it was a perfect match for us. When I announced this podcast, Molly was the first person to reach out and say, I want to be on this podcast. And I hit her right back and said, absolutely, I would love for you to be on. Let's make it happen. It was a very enjoyable chat, and I will take you to that now. Told me that I should be a food critic
really
more often. Yeah.
Because you're eloquent and you're passionate about it?
Yeah. We when we go eat places, I'm always the one that I turn into a super fine diner.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I'm
but
the person talking
in a douchey way, or
no,
you're just
in a nice way.
Because I don't, and it's not to the point of the menu, but I feel like sometimes people go into I don't know. When I hear someone being super fine dining, I'm like, oh no. But I also I like to talk about food when I'm in a place that I love. I talk about it the way that I would talk about music.
Yeah, sure.
And that's fun.
Yeah, the thing right about a real a great fine dining place is the hospitality feature, right?
Yeah.
And so if it's a place that I expect to be a hospitality kind of place, then I like slip into that mode of where like, I guess I sort of set this expectation of like what, you know, like going to somewhere like Yolan, right? Like that is the kind of place, because like when he had Spiaggia in Chicago, like it had a star. And so like being like, oh, I'm going to get waited on. Like I'm at a place with a star.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between an expectation of that and being like, I deserve this because I'm paying this.
Right.
Versus being like, no, this is part of the experience. And
You're
like,
more like
my
excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited, and my
anticipating
appreciation
it.
is high, like in that way.
So you're saying like you're fine dining in like, you're the target audience.
Yeah, for sure.
For people why they do it.
Oh yeah. I said in that episode with the Now and Then couple, like that it is maybe the tragedy of my life that I am so interested in fine dining, but it is the thing that is outside of my means. Like it is
for now.
Sure. Well,
Until your podcast takes off.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, but it's like cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Also, like, you know, you can't go eating bone marrow and beef tartare, you know, like all the time. And so, whereas like anything else that I'm interested in, because I'm the kind of person that like I will get into something and then deep dive about it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like go hard. But it's like I can spend like $300 on books and documentaries about any topic and then be like, I have a great handle on this. And it's like, there's only so much you can do about like a restaurant until you've gone and eaten it. You know, like the amount of Noma books that I've read will never stand up to not having you know, gone to eat at Noma. You know, like there is a hard cap on what that situation is like.
You know what? I think actually I'm coming back to this thing about like it's the great tragedy of your life, and I don't think so. And I will tell. I'm not going to try to talk you out of how you feel.
I would love.
Feelings are facts. Okay, so like if that's how you feel, then I'm not going to say. But I do feel like some degree of scarcity or like something that you're passionate about or something that you love being just out of reach makes it so much more enjoyable when you get it. And the thing that I have thought multiple times is like, sure, I would love to have more money, like a lot more money.
Yeah.
But like I've been sort of like adjacent to money my whole life. So like my dad came from a decent amount of money. Like I went to a really good like liberal arts school with people who were like heirs to you know, national legacy brands and stuff.
Swanee, right?
Yeah. And you just be like hanging out with someone like, oh yeah, that kid's the heir to the Anheuser-Busch fortune. You're like, oh cool, hey man. And you know, but they don't like. It's like I almost feel like a lot of times people don't really soak up experiences because they're like, I can come back anytime I want. And like when I went to I got to do a study abroad program. And
where was that?
It was.
I mean, you're probably about to tell me, but
no, it was at so it was actually a partner program with Rhodes University, and it was it started out in Oxford, and then Greece, Italy, and Turkey.
Awesome.
But they would give you the first like 6 weeks you're at Oxford, they give you Fridays off specifically so that you can travel around Europe.
Oh, that's cool.
And then, so I got to go to Venice and Spain, Barcelona. But then like once you actually go on, like it's basically like a grand tour, like the way they used to do. And so you're all the stuff that you learned about at Oxford, then you go see those places in person.
Yeah.
And you're getting the lessons like on site, which is insane. But like, when I got to Venice, I like came around a corner into the Piazza San Marco and I just started bawling. I was like, oh my God. Because I genuinely grew up believing, not that my parents ever said anything like this, but I just like, I felt like I'm never going to go to Europe. That's not a thing.
Sure.
You know? And so then like to suddenly be there and like, it just was like a dream sequence, you know? And then we were in Rome and I was like, tireless. Like I would wake up early and I was like, I'm going to see everything I possibly can. We were only there for like 3 days.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the literal like foundation of the entire fucking world. Like everything
Yes.
we know
Absolutely.
comes from here. Like,
Yeah.
what are you guys doing?
Yeah.
You know, I was like waking up early and trying to see everything I could, and like people were like, oh yeah, I came here a couple years ago, or like, you know, whatever. And I was just like,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't. Yeah, it
there are
doesn't
certain
matter.
things that no matter how many times you can see them, because you're right, like the foundations thing. I used to travel to Ireland a lot, and by a lot I mean like 5 or 6 times in a 4-year.
Yeah, that's
span.
a lot.
Yeah, that is comparatively that is a lot.
Any measure,
yeah.
I think that's a lot.
But the thing that was most striking is like not to set a certain tone about it, but like in the way that Americans think of like 250 years of American history as being a long time, and it's like it's not.
Yeah,
Like
it's
that is a long time. It is longer than any of our lifetimes multiplied.
Yeah.
But it's only like a quarter to an eighth, of what heritages of other peoples, in the,
you can like
in the
trip
Western
over.
European
You
world.
can trip over shit on a walk that's been around longer than America. Like
Yeah,
it's
that's right.
unbelievable. Like we were studying like Hadrian's Wall, and I was like, oh my God. And I mean, this is again not to set a certain tone, but I come from Mississippi, and they also sort of just assume that you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
They don't give you the tools to go anywhere. But I at least not in the public school system. But I got there, and I didn't know that the Roman Empire was in the UK until I got there, and I was like, okay, I was today years old. But they're like, here, come look at this like Roman excavation site and like all this other stuff, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
And it's like not just the depth of the history, but the overlay of it all. You know? So then like we also went to Turkey, so like the Hagia Sophia blew my freaking mind because it's been through like, Persian and Roman and all these other things. So there's like frescoes that are covering up, what are they called? Oh God, I'm gonna ruin it. But like the little like the place in the mosque that like faces faces Mecca and whatever. Like
yes.
All of that stuff exists in one building.
Yeah.
And then you go into the what are the like sewers underneath the city?
Like catacombs?
Yeah, cisterns.
Oh, cisterns.
Yeah, under the cisterns, and they're like literally they have they took relics from that time and moved them into the damn sewer as like just the most epic fuck you of all time. Like we shit on your culture. Like it's just amazing. So I don't know. I totally hear that. I think it's. I don't know. We caught it. I lost the thread. That's going to happen a lot.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, that's what talking to me is like for anybody. There is nobody that gets away from gets away free from that.
I'm so excited about this.
But
we're talking about scarcity and appreciating things, and
that's the thing is about open appreciation and to make it topical because we were talking about dining, but the first time that Amanda and I ever like went to nice places, we decided we'd go to Vegas. Because it was like we can go to Bouchon, Thomas Keller's place.
Yeah.
So we did Bouchon and then the Nomad Hotel out there, which I'd been to the one in New York, but it was just a way of being like, okay, we can go for a weekend, and we can have dinner at Bouchon and then Nomad.
It's like around the world.
Yeah, like that is the nice thing about Vegas. Like, man, Vegas is such a not real place, which is true.
Yeah,
because like everything there is designed to be
an escape.
Yeah, an escape. And then when you get off on like a side street, then you're like, oh, now we're in gritty Vegas, and
the underbelly.
Yeah, we a couple of years ago on a Christmas tour, it was like a whole thing where I was only going to be home for a couple days. And my tour manager and I were talking about like they were going to park the bus in Vegas for a couple days because we were like flying in and out of some dates, but the bus was going to stay out there. And he was like, I think I'm going to stay with the bus in Vegas for a couple days. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And we did that. We just went to stuff and like ate cool shit and,
Yeah.
But that's really the thing is like you can get so many great restaurants in one condensed place. Like, there is really nowhere else to do that. And I say that with respect to New York and LA and places like that. But those are like OG restaurants, whereas like you make this wonderland by having like franchise versions that are still top quality. I mean, some of them are. But
it's like you can also go, there are like the best restaurants in New York, But when you go to Vegas, you can go to the best, like some version of the best restaurant in New York, LA, Chicago,
right, absolutely.
like all the top food towns in the world.
And so that's why Amanda and I went that first time, was to like go there. But talking about enjoying experiences and appreciating things, we were at Bouchon and we were having the time of our lives, and we look over and there's this couple, and I don't mean couple romantically, I mean like they were clearly business couples who just like expensing their Bouchon dinner. They had the salmon tartare off to the side with like 3 bites taken out of it, and they were not going to eat it. And we talked pretty seriously about like
asking if you
could we just like take it, like how like it's going to be it's amazing, like why are you not eating it? I want to eat that, and you're just going to leave a $26 plate of like raw salmon sitting over on the side, like. And I know other people who are that way too, where like they've gone to restaurants and watched people do like $2,500 of wine on like a company card, like at a great, restaurant. And it's like, I think people that have too much money don't understand because their access is so high.
Well, I feel like, yeah, you don't enjoy it as much. You don't savor it as much because it's not special in the same way. But I also think that like maybe, okay, this sounds like, I'm realizing it sounds like a total bias, but I have seen enough of it maybe to, there's some background to it.
Sure.
But like, because it's not, I don't know, you having gone as hard as you did on Noma, like I think in part because it's unattainable.
Sure.
Right? Like I think when you can have whatever, it's like you're not going to nerd out about something in the same way.
I mean, maybe. I've also gone, really hard about Eric Repair books, and I've eaten at Le Bernardin, and that idea. Like, so that is, so I think there's some like midpoint of that, or like some of it to me is like a purgatory of it, perhaps.
Well, let me clarify. Like Noma's its own world. Like
sure,
I think
course.
that's that.
Yeah.
But I guess what I mean is like I think it's when you can just sort of like expense it, and it's part of, and when it's like transactional in that way.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not just that you don't savor it. It's like I don't know that it has the same like emotional connection.
Yeah. Now here's a question for you. I do not come from, a great source of money. I have eaten well, like, a number of like 3-star restaurants and things like that. If there were a world in which I obtained a lot of money, I don't know that would go away.
Right. I don't think
like
so
if
either.
I could increase the amount of dining, I could do that way. I don't know that my appreciation would dwindle. I
would agree. I think that's kind of what this is where I feel like it maybe borders on bias, is like I do think that I'm speaking more of the people who have always had it.
Yeah,
like
sure.
I think it's one of the great joys is to see someone who like spent enough time nerding out about something that they couldn't have.
Yeah.
That then when they finally get to the point of being able to have it, it's like they seem to enjoy sharing it with other people. Like there's a largesse there of like, I want to give you that experience that I couldn't have for so long. And like those are some of like the best hospitality moments that I feel like I've been able to be a part of, is when like people are so generous with that experience and they want to like lavish those things on the people around them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have a really complicated relationship with the concept of luxury because I think a lot of times it is presented as very like aspirational and again like transactional, and almost like the foundation of it is like the fact that you can't have this is not even necessarily that it's that much better. Like a lot of it can just be like marketing or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like it's this mentality. For the things that I do and the things that I like, they are naturally they are for good reason at a higher price point. Yeah. Right. So it's like, and I often joke that I can't afford my own services, and I think that's true for a lot of people.
So, yeah. I mean, same in our life.
Yeah. And like creative people. And it's like, but I've kind of tried to like re-examine it a little bit and say like, sometimes luxury can actually be that moment of like you want to invest in and lavish the best of things, whatever that thing is. You want to lavish that on the people that matter to you, and celebrate it. And I think still like if you're doing it in a way that is more sort of like occasional or special, then I don't know, you're not like missing out on some of the it's almost like you eat too much of like some very rich dessert. It's not the same.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, by the time I get to the end of a Costco package of creme brulees, I feel that way.
I just watched Poor Things, which I have so many complicated feelings about also, but there's a whole scene where they are in Lisbon and they're eating pastel de nata, which is so incredible. And she's like, I want more. And he's like, no, one is enough.
Yeah.
And then she goes out on her own and eats like 5 and then throws up.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, that encapsulates so much of who I am as a person.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of complicated relationships, did you watch The Bear?
I've only watched a few episodes, and I loved the episodes that I saw. And then for whatever reason, my husband won't watch it, which is endlessly annoying to me. And we don't have a ton of free time to watch shows, so like it sort of has to be something that we're watching together. Or it's like, I'm not going to have time to watch both. So it's on the back burner for sure.
I mean, it seems to be among food people a one or the other kind of thing of like people are either like, yes, I love this, or people like Amanda could not, like 3 episodes and she was like too
triggering.
Much too much triggering and like and I know a bunch of people, or I've I know a few people and I've read a bunch of people who say like that kind of thing, that it was just like too real, which is weird because in a medium like television or film, like that is a success
for sure,
you know, like to be like
Absolutely.
too real enough that the people who do it for real are
watch it.
can't deal with it and stuff like that. But
well, they hired all the right people. I mean, you know what I mean? Like to have Maddie Matheson as a consultant or whatever, consultant.
He's also incredible in the show.
Yeah,
his character is so good as just like. And he's not even acting. Like, I mean, he's not as dumb as the character is, but like his just personality, it's like they just
you can't turn
shoved
it
him
off.
in there. Yeah, that's impossible to do.
I will say the limited amount that I have seen, there's a scene where he just goes in and starts cleaning.
Yeah.
And like can't stop. And he gets in all of the nooks and crannies, and like that to me was one of the weirdest. Like it actually kind of made me emotional because I have such. And I'm not in fine dining world anymore, but like some of the stuff that I actually really loved about it was the shit that people did when no one was looking. You know, it was like, it was so ennobling. And I have specific memories of like working at City House back in the day, and like Tandy was like, pull all the fridges away from the wall and like get into the back of it, and like he was like showing me all this stuff, and I was like, oh damn, y'all are really, you know. And there's sort of like hyperbolic examples of like you must cut the tape and stuff like that, but it's almost like
I started cutting my masking tape after like that part. I was just like, but it was one of those things where it was like both are sexy, right? Like a torn piece of masking tape on a bottle is sexy. A perfectly straight cut piece of masking tape is also God. They're both just like a real thing.
But I think I think a good parallel is maybe like a music writer, because people are always like, look at this bullshit that they put on the writer. And like, I heard somebody say one time, like, no, they put that shit on there to make sure that you read it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's stuff in there that's also about like the quality of the music or the safety of the crew or the whatever. And like, they will know. Right when they walk in.
Yeah, there's plenty of function.
I think there's some of that in those exercises of like, show up with your fucking shirt ironed, like show up like a professional. And it's an easy industry to be unprofessional in, or to be like sometimes professional in. But yeah, I remember just thinking like there was something about that exercise of like taking ownership of your kitchen that way, even when no one was looking, and like making sure all your tools were like where they needed to be. And it was like borderline surgical, you know. And I just loved watching him do that, because it's like, damn, I've done that before. I don't do it at my own house.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm so much cleaner. Like I'm so much more obsessed about cleaning at work than at my own. My husband's like, can you just do that? I'm like, no, I can't. I'm spent.
I'm a stress cleaner.
Oh.
Like when I am like stressed out, like I'll clean, just like a...
Call me the next time you're stressed. I'll invite you.
I don't know that actually, that's not true. I've done that before, like where I'll be at friends' houses and then I'm also an introvert though too. So like
What?
the best thing you can do is
I'm
like,
sorry, what? I have not gotten that impression from you at all.
so yeah, the best thing I can do at friends' houses sometimes, like I'm going to go do the dishes and nobody wants to do the dishes with you. So like, it's like I can go escape over there for a half hour.
But I mean, you could also be careful of like somebody might just be like, why is he fucking cleaning my house?
Okay, what is the best meal that you've ever eaten?
You can't ask that question.
No, I sure can.
Oh, shit. I mean, it's just people. I feel like this is a thing that people ask, and it's like, how do you choose? It's like Rosemary, not Rosemary's Baby. It's like Sophie's Choice. It's Sophie's Choice. I mean, I think weirdly, you would think that I would think more about the food.
Yeah.
But it's kind of actually like what you're talking about. Like it's a holistic experience of something. So like one of them, can I give you a couple?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Also, I will say, by the way, I've said this to numerous people. I think listeners of this podcast have already heard me say it twice. Is that I often compare like great meals to concerts in a way that is like, it is a whole experience.
Yeah.
There is like a time and all these things like that makes it like a whole thing. So I'm fully on board with experientialness of it. Like,
let me also just say what you are, the anxiety that you are seeing right now is that I have a shit memory. I have like the worst memory in the world, which is actually sometimes serves me because I don't really hold grudges because I can't remember why I was mad at someone.
Yeah. Man, that must be great.
It is great. I'm kind of like Dory in Finding Nemo, but like, but I do remember certain ones. So like one of the best ones I would say was on our honeymoon, we went to Paris. And in case you haven't already picked up on this, I'm super ADHD and I don't plan things in advance all that well. And so I was really like super deep in my cooking, early cooking days. And I had like 3 different jobs and I was obsessive about it. And we decided to go to Paris, but I did not have the time or the whatever energy to the brain wiring maybe to plan ahead and like get rezos and figure out where we're gonna go and all this other stuff. And I also didn't really think we had a whole lot of money. And then we, you get all the checks and the cards and the stuff at the wedding. And so like on our way out of town, like on 2 wheels, we like went to the ATM and deposited all this stuff. And the whole time, again, like growing up without a lot of money and stuff, like I was just like, we're gonna fucking run out of money. We're gonna have to go home early. That I was like, that was somewhere in the back of my mind. Yeah, sure. And then I went out for coffee one day and I came home and my husband's like looking at the bank and he's like, babe, we got to talk about something. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. And he said, all the deposits came through from the money we got from the wedding. And he was like, we have a fuck ton of money. And I was like, what? And he goes, we can either be like very responsible and put this towards, like
all
savings or like a, down payment on a house or whatever. He's like, or we can just fucking make it rain in Paris. And I was like, well, you know what I want to do. So we were in this like dinky sort of like mold smelling apartment. And then we just like checked into a hotel in the Champs-Elysees and it smelled amazing. And like, there was a concierge, like just classic Paris. It was like a movie thing.
Yeah, sure.
And he was like, welcome, the Martins. And on the way in, my husband was like, so listen, I've been trying to get a reservation. He somehow had been researching Joel Robuchon.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell him about it, so I was shocked. And he said, I'm trying to get us in there, and like, it's not happening. Because I was literally like spending an hour a day researching where I wanted to eat like that day and calling these restaurants. They're like, no. And they would just like hang up on me.
That's it,
And so he mentioned, L'Atelier de Joel Robuchon. And he said, oh, yes, it's right across the street. You want to go tonight? And Steve was like, yeah. And so it was just this total like Pretty Woman kind of thing, where we had an epic glow up and he went to like the Nike store and got custom made Nikes with like his name stitched on the back, and stuff like they were the replica of the Steve Zissou sneaker. I mean, just ridiculous stuff. And, but we went there and it was also a perfect example of that juxtaposition of the entitled people having, just the they were going there to sort of check it off of a list versus us where I was like, I never thought this would happen to me.
Yes.
And we did like the full, and I made him promise to never tell me what it cost. I still don't know. But we did like the whole tasting menu and I got the wine pairings and everything. And I mean, it was the kind of stuff where like it had everything had custom made like serving pieces. Like the dessert was a mango like sort of sorbet situation, and literally it was on this like red, like race car red lacquer plate that said mango with like an exclamation point on it. I was like, what is this? But I mean, it was absolutely perfect in every way. I mean, like it was so beautiful. And literally at the end, we sat at the bar and the woman who was serving us was just like, she kept sort of like cutting eyes over at the people that were next to us and sort of like, like grumbling. And she actually put her hand on her heart and she said, people like you are why I still love what I do. She said like, you experienced this in the way that we all intended it. Yeah. And that just like meant the world to me and I'll just never forget it.
That's the best answer. Like that is the best answer I could have gotten out of you of asking about what the best meal was. Like you could have told me anything and mentioned dishes and I would have accepted it. Yeah. But not accepted, I would have been like, yeah, that checks out. That's great.
That sounds great.
But then like, but a real answer like that is for sure true. We just did locust for New Year's Eve.
Amazing.
That's what we've done the last couple New Year's Eve. Like that's just become our thing. But we ordered everything because that's what we do when we go there. But the server, who was someone who didn't know us, because we've been there a number of times. It is our favorite place. Was sort of like, are you sure? We were like, no, that's what we always do. And he was like, well, we put a couple extra things on, and we were so like, yeah, no, that'll be fine. Like everything that is eatable. Because I don't drink, so there's a couple drinks on the menu. And then also they have a caviar supplement for the beef tartare. And we never do it because I honestly think it's better without. But, and so there were still maybe 3 dishes left to go. And one of the Sues came over and he brought us a dish and he was like, we're all rooting for you. Because no one else had done the whole menu. Everybody else ordered like half or whatever, but we ordered everything. And it was just one of those things where it's like, and in the end, we only ordered one of the 2 desserts because it was like, that seems like a little much. And they gave us the other one as a gift anyway, just because that made it the full thing. And just that, it gives me that story gives me the same vibe of being told, like, we're rooting for you to make it through this whole menu. And we're like, yeah, we'll do that. No problem.
Absolutely. I did think of another one if you want to
put
this one. Right before I started Juniper Green, I went to stage at Adelegi in London, and my mom came with me.
I was going to ask you about that anyway, so this is a good talk.
My mom came with me, and we went to Lisbon for a few days, but then we went to Venice after, and it was just an absolutely magical trip because she's just she's just an incredible human. And I had one place that I wanted to go eat, and it ended up being, we walked all the way there. It was on our last day, and we ended up being, it ended up being closed for like renovations or something. I was like, oh shit. So I had a backup plan that I wasn't as excited about. But it was this kind of like, there's apparently like a whole like Jewish ghetto quarter of Venice, and that's where this restaurant was. And we were the only people there because we got there like kind of early for lunch service, and they just brought out tons and tons of these little plates. It was almost like at Korean restaurants, you know, they bring out all the pickles. And it was like probably 20 little small plates of like condiments and pickles and sauces and nuts and like whatever. And what was so fascinating about it was that there were like these deep roots in like Israeli culture and like their sort of like the diaspora stuff of it, but it's also one of the most like dynamic port cities in history, right? So like it has influences that you can taste from all these different eras and all these different countries of people that have lived there and influenced the cooking. And I literally like halfway through, because A is like a family place where people just kept coming and they were like, oh, thank you. Like they just were bursting with pride to share it with you. But it also, for whatever reason, I just had this feeling of like all the people that came before and had made variations on these foods.
Yeah.
And they're like longing for home, and they're like, you know, these recipes and these ingredients and whatever that they literally carried with them. It's like all they had left of home, right? And then to mingle those things with this new place and that industriousness of it, and I don't know, it just like I don't think I've ever had a meal that had more of like a total sense of place. Like this meal could only happen here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that it just like made me cry like halfway through. My mom was like, "You okay?" And I was like, "I don't know if I could explain it."
Yeah.
But we had this really, you know, fascinating conversation around it. But it was like, I don't know, that combination of the people making it with such intention, and there being a story in it, you know, there being that like that human emotion in it. It was just like, it was all very tangible.
What was your first bug for cooking?
Ooh, well, I kind of grew up in a family of food loving people. I wouldn't say like we were, you know, constantly even like going out or doing anything like that, but just like everybody knew how to cook and was good at it, I think. And
what
it was
a gift.
also, and it was also just like the center of everything, you know, like, I'm from the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and all my whole family's background is like New Orleans. So that's very influential. And I would say that it really probably started with my aunt Chris, my mom's sister, who's no longer with us, but she was also my godmother, and just one of the most like phenomenally intuitive cooks you can imagine. Like she was also just an artist, the kind of person who everything she touched or encountered, she made more beautiful in some way.
Yeah.
No matter what the medium was. It was like food or sculpture or, you know, decorating or anything.
Yeah.
You just had that flow.
I understand. That's how Amanda is.
Really?
I mean, she's incredible at cooking, but then also like, you know, over Christmas, her brother is getting married in a few months, and they asked her to, you know, like do a watercolor of like the venue to be on their invitation, and she just shit out like this like beautiful watercolor, and it's like it's that kind of thing where it's just like, yes, this is your thing,
do that too,
and then it's like, great, like here's this other thing, and then, you know, and it is as good. It's just like wizardry of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so I understand that. It's a great people like that are magic.
Awesome. Yeah. So she definitely kind of like gave me like, I would say like the first times I remember tasting something and be like, oh my God, that's delicious. Like it was with her.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, I have a very specific memory of like when I actually got interested in like me cooking versus food. It was like, so I was 13, and we were visiting the elderly mother of my mom's then boyfriend in Meridian, Mississippi. Her name was Jo Van Deventer. And we were just like driving through town, and my mom was like, hey, can we stop and like have coffee? And she had full silver service for coffee. She had black bottom pie, all this other stuff. And it was very much that thing of like, you know, the grown-ups are going to, you know, have a talk in the kitchen, and you just go into the other room. Yeah. So I was like in the living room, and she had all these books around, and one of them was the Mississippi, the Jackson Junior League cookbook from the 90s, and it was called Come On In, and it had like an exclamation point even like on the title, and they had all of these, you know, recipes from the different highbrow ladies of the Junior League, and of course their help, and then they had all these like suggested menus, so there would be like supper on the grounds and stuff like that, and it was again, it was this sort of like window into this whole world that like I couldn't even imagine. But it just, I don't know, it just grabbed me, and I poured over it, and I like remembered thinking like, ooh, this is so amazing. And she noticed, and she gave me a copy for my 13th birthday.
Oh, wow.
And that year, my dad's birthday was in September. a couple months later, and I, with my aunt Chris, we cooked a 5-course luncheon for my dad's birthday, and I actually still remember most of what I made. I made a chilled cucumber dill bisque with shrimp. I made a 15-layer lemon curd cake. I made oh man, there was this salad that had like an Asian inspired dressing, which I'm sure was like very groundbreaking at the time, but it had a topping that was like fried ramen noodles from the package. Fry that up with like butter and pecans, and it's dope. I still make it sometimes. But it was like my first experience of like project cooking for one, and also like creating a moment for someone that I loved in this very like tangible way, and then watching everybody at the table just sort of like groan and like, you know, eyes roll back in the head.
It's crazy that you got to do both of those things at once the first time. Like, you know, like it's a long time before people like, you know, get to make like decent dishes and then also get to like do it for other people. So like that you got that like right out of the gate.
Yeah, and Chris was very much like, her house was this beautiful kind of like antebellum home on the beach in Pasquotank, Mississippi, and like her house was just sort of like the center of the universe for our family, you know, like and she was always hosting people and just, you know, could cook for a crowd. And I don't know, I watched a lot of that, but she was able to sort of like nurture that in me, and it felt like a kinship with her. And yeah, I learned so much just watching her like taste things and adjust things. And again, like she just was so intuitive. Like she would take a recipe and be like, oh, I'm not gonna do that. She would do a lot of it, but then she'd be like, well, what do you think? Do you like that? Do you think it needs this, etc.? And so like, yeah, she just sort of gave me a lot of confidence from a really early time.
That's great. I didn't grow up around any of that.
Really?
Well, when I say any of that, I mean the intuitive cooking part. Like I don't have that. I am so much more of a, like, I can be experiential about it. Where it's like, I kind of have to recipe something 2 or 3 times to understand it, and then we'll divert and like go out into the wild about something. But that's mostly just because I didn't kind of like grow up around that that thing.
You're not immersed in it enough now?
I mean, now is better, but I mean, I'm 37 years old. Like, how much better is it going to get? You know, like, if I didn't learn Spanish, it's that's right. Like,
not gonna happen.
it is baked in here now to be a kind of like figure this out and then go kind of person. Did you really like pursue learning about cooking before or after you like wanted to do music? Like, how do those two things like helix out? I
mean, I definitely never pictured working in food. I think I had sort of grandiose music dreams in high school, but even then it was sort of like, it was always very tentative. You know, like I remember I had my dream at the time was like to go to Berkeley. Because I was like, that's the center of the, you know, if you're good at music, that's where you go. And
that's where I went.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. My uncle went there, graduated from there, and actually they like offered him a teaching position.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
he ended up not doing it. But I remember thinking like, that's the place for me. That's like where the people who get me are going to be, and blah, blah, blah. And then but I had no formal training at all. Like I just was
Neither did I till
singer.
I went to Berkeley.
Really?
Berkeley was the place where I got formally trained.
Damn, I probably should have done it. But anyway, but I like, I went and toured it, and I remembered actually feeling like it kind of left me cold, which surprised me because I thought, I was like, this is the place I need to be. And my mom, bless her, like we didn't have the money to do this at all, but she was like, I think she knew that I was already kind of playing small in my head. And she was like, no, that's not gonna work. So she took me on this college tour. We went to like Bard and like a couple other places, and that's actually how I ended up at Swanee. So that's a great thing. It was like the last stop on the tour. But it was almost like The Shining, because we got to this, like, as part of the tour, we got to this one hall of like rehearsal rooms that were like broom closets. And it was very long. And then I just like kept peeking in the windows, and it almost looked like an insane asylum.
Yep.
Because people were just like hunkered down and looked very fucking stressed.
Yep.
There were like pyramids of Red Bulls. And I was just like, this looks awful. Like, this is not.
I mean, that is
all.
what Berkeley was like as
right.
well.
And I was like, this is not at all how I want to make music. But
there used to be there was this hallway in one of the main buildings at Berkeley, and it was probably like 6 or 7 rehearsal, practice rooms per side. And they were broom closet size, but it seemed to be the place where all of the horn players played.
Oh.
But you had to go through it to get to a number of places. And I invoked this word before, but this is a much more apt use of it. It was purgatory. Yeah. Like having to walk through that and just hearing 16 different horn players playing different things for 25 feet or 50 or like 50 feet
that
of walking.
That makes my neck tweak a little bit. Like,
I haven't thought about it in a long time, and it makes
because I'm like yeah, the ADHD thing, the sensory overload is real.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's still really funny because I wish maybe that someone had said to me, okay, yes, this is part of it.
Yeah.
But also like on the other side of that is the improvisational stuff and the bands that form here and like just the shit that happens probably in the dorms and stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
But I didn't really see a lot of that.
That was the best part of Berkeley. People ask me that all the time, and it's like I kind of have gone through like a downplaying of a Berkeley education for a long time. And I think so much of that is living in Nashville and the Belmont like crew thing, and also I know a lot of really shitty Berkeley musicians as well. People that came out and couldn't play or do anything like in the end anyway. And it was sort of like, well, let me just
culinary school kids.
Yeah.
They just come out thinking they know everything.
And I did that to some degree. I had to have been insufferable for a few years. Like
that's a rite of passage.
Yeah. A friend of mine who's older than I am said the first time that she met me and like played with me that the things she thought were cute, pretentious but cute. And that is probably what will be written on my headstone.
Yeah. That's amazing.
But nowadays I try and be more judicious about being like, no, I did get a very good musical education there, but I have said forever, and I've never wavered on this, that being exposed to so many people who were very good and all the things that they were interested in, and that's what you do at college in general.
Yeah.
But when everybody comes with this gigantic CD book full of stuff that you've never heard before, and like, there's some things that now I know, like I should have heard, but like, I don't know, in 2005, where do you hear 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover for the first time? Like, that's where I learned about that song. Yeah. And it's like, now I think to myself, like, how could I have lived life without having heard it before? Sure. But like, just tons and tons of that kind of stuff. And that is really the thing I think that comes from like a music education in that way is everybody, all of a sudden you're around all these people with so much different backgrounds because everybody's parents were in different stuff, and then you learn about different stuff in high school and all these things, and then swallowing up so much of it at one time. Like, that is sort of the best thing that I got out of that. Is having a better idea.
Well, and I think too, there's like, I don't know, anything that you are like hardcore nerdy about, like if you love music enough to go to Berkeley, there's something that's got to be so like validating and beautiful about just being immersed in a place and with people. It's a fucking temple to the thing that you love. Like, and I think that's maybe one of the things that I also loved and sometimes still miss about fine dining world too, is like there's kind of something awesome about being around people who are obsessive. Yeah. And I think especially now that we're in this age where like you can know a ton of shit or like a little bit about a ton of shit, right? Like it's like information has never been more available. I heard this really interesting thing on a podcast. I think it was the Trevor Noah podcast where he was talking about, they were debating whether critics were actually still relevant. Yeah. Because, music or food or whatever, like a lot of these things, it was more about music. They were like, it used to be a pretty substantial investment to go buy a record. That's right. So like you needed someone to say like, you should spend your money on this record or you should not. Yeah. And now it's so much more like democratized. I really still think there's so much value in people who can guide your taste. And help you develop those things and figure out what you know and what you don't know. But like,
well, no one is born with great taste.
Right.
Like that is like, it can seem that way, but that's not true. You know, like that it is something that has to be cultivated. There's so many stupid fucking tropes in the world, but like things about like the average overnight success is 10 to 15 years, you know, like, but it appears that something came out of nowhere fully developed, and it's like, no, it's, you know, iceberg tips and all that stupid fucking shit that people talk about that way. And that is super true about critics. That exact thing has come up because Pitchfork is dying. Because Pitchfork is being absorbed into GQ, I guess.
Lord.
And it's like, for all the foibles of Pitchfork in its early days of being like way too gatekeepy and like and stuff, that they course corrected pretty well. But the idea that like critics are valid, but also there has never been more diversity in what's out there as well. You're never going to unite people around records the same way that you used to be able to.
Wait, say more about that.
It takes something very special, I think, for, I don't know, this is a whole like music industry discussion, but like...
Are you talking about like a zeitgeist moment kind of thing?
Yeah. There are not zeitgeist records, and that's not because there aren't records out there that are that good anymore. It's not that there's not anything that good made that deserves to be a zeitgeist. It's just that it's so much easier to fall into a niche and be in your own little niche, that coming over into like a zeitgeisty thing is harder to do. Yeah,
I see that.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's, I mean, to some extent, how do you have a zeitgeist record when no one listens to a whole record at all anymore?
Well, I mean, that's a whole other thing.
Like, don't even start with it today.
Yeah, that's a whole...
We don't have time for that.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Is there... I mean, like, I read somebody say this not long ago, not to besmirch the good name of Taylor Swift, but like, has there ever been someone who is the biggest thing in music that the average person that knows about them knows the least about their music?
I'm going to need you to say that again.
Yeah, I said that in a really clunky way. Basically, has there ever been someone that is the pinnacle of music that the average person knows who they are and knows of their, you know, celebrity without knowing about their art at the same level?
That's an interesting...
Now, there are a whole lot of Swifties out there.
Oh, yeah.
But the average person that has something to say about Taylor Swift or sees Today Show or Good Morning America, whatever about her, that doesn't know anything about her music.
I don't think it's fucking possible to not know anything about her music. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's probably people who know more about her, like, they see her as a celebrity, this like ubiquitous figure in culture, without having listened to like deep cuts. But I don't think like if you put a gun to the head of anybody in this country and said, name a Taylor Swift song, they can do it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
that's true.
They know, and like even they probably know more than they even think they do.
Yeah.
In part because most people don't realize how many songs she's written for other people.
Well, absolutely.
You know what I mean? But
thing.
like, I think, she's been around long enough that like, you know, songs of hers are in so many movies and commercials and, you know, all these other...
It's probably like, closer to a Madonna thing where like at some point Madonna transcended being a musical artist and people stopped thinking about that. Yeah. You know, in a certain way.
Well, she earned that too, but... Well,
yeah. Well, but that's the cool thing about Madonna, though, is that Madonna was like a scene kid.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You know, like that she wasn't like out there like gunning to do it. She just happened to be, she was a girl that everybody knew from those clubs in New York. And
you don't think she knew it, though? I feel like she always knew she was going to be
I'm
Madonna.
sure. It reminds me of, have you ever seen the Decline of Western Civilization documentaries?
No.
They're cool. They're like, well, the first one was about like the LA punk scene in the 70s. And then she made another one, and it's called The Metal Years, and it's about hair metal. And it's my favorite. I don't know if it's the best, but it's really incredible because, you know, hair metal is just ridiculous. Yeah. In its own beautiful...
Can I just say that's one of my favorite sort of dichotomies, or the, I guess, things where it's like, it's not the best, but it's my favorite. Yeah. I feel like that's that could be its own... sort of like niche podcast about like a record or a movie or whatever. Like, this is not by any means what someone says. It's like,
it's like my love relationship with Grease 2. I love Grease 2. And like, I'll defend it to a certain degree, but I also don't think it's like, I don't think it's, you know.
You don't think it's better than Grease 1?
No, it's not better than Grease 1.
Wait, why though? Why do you like it the more?
Oh, I don't know. Probably because Michelle Pfeiffer is really hot in it.
Duh.
Also, the music is great. there's a chintziness to it that just transcends, like, I don't know, now that you're like really asking me, most people, when I get into a discussion about Grease 2 are just like, fuck you, it's not good. Like, what is wrong with you? No one actually asks me to, like, you may be the first person to ever ask me to justify it.
I'm not even sure I've seen it, actually.
Oh, gosh.
But now you're selling me on it.
Yeah.
I want to read it.
I'll
read it.
It's worth it. But yeah, I mean, but I don't think that it's The Godfather. Like, I'm not going to claim that it's better than The Godfather.
Yeah.
You know, but it happens to be my favorite. But The Decline of Western Civilization 2 is definitely Penelope Spheris that made those films. She did this incredible job of not just interviewing musicians. She interviewed like scene people. And there's this sequence, and she knew what she was doing. She had to have known, where she talks to all these kids about like making it. And they're all like, well, I'm going to make it. And then you hear her ask something like, well, what if you don't? And they're like, well, I'm going to. Just every variation on that. And it's super cringy. It had to have been super cringy in and of its time. But it came out in, I think, 1988. And you and I know that 3 years later, like, grunge would happen and all of that would come crumbling down. But these kids think they're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and instead it's an oncoming train of like the end of their scene.
No.
You know?
Oh, God.
So to watch it like now is just like, oh, you poor things. In like 3 years, you're going to be like irrelevant LA Sunset Strip kids.
I will for sure love that film because I've been really digging all of the like the apex downfall movies of like WeWork, you know, and then the Beanie Baby movie.
Oh yeah.
And like Chippendales and those kind of like there's just something extra delicious about that where you're like, we're unstoppable,
and that's not true whatsoever.
No. And then like the Beanie Baby one in particular, because you just look at it and you're like, what? That kind of stuff fascinates me endlessly.
Yeah.
How you can convince otherwise seemingly intelligent people that of the value of something.
Do you like cult documentaries?
Yes.
Yeah, because
so much.
They're that way, right?
Yes.
It's like, it's always about, you know, the kind of people, especially the Scientology stuff. Like
the Nexium one, you know, when they show the videos and the interviews with people at the beginning, the values, the contribute, like even the actual community and the stuff that they're doing in the world is all seemingly so positive. Yeah. You know? And like all of the stuff that they're saying we want to do and that we're aspiring to, you're like, that sounds great. Like, sign me up, you know? Yeah. And I think especially because like, I do think as there's less and less actual like religion and like church and stuff, like there is a void for community. And it's like, and people yearn for that. And that's why they end up, you know, kind of obsessed with like Orange Theory and stuff, you know, like there's just like people need structure to stay engaged. And
that's
like, so I think I have this like empathy for people who start out that way. And then they're like, once they've had a taste of that and this belonging, which we crave so desperately, and they have a community of people around them, then it's like, it's always like these little things. And then it just goes like, it's like exponential. Oh yeah. It goes like exponentially insane. And it's like, but at a certain point they're like, well, I'm all in, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And they're like the options, the binary is like, you can stay in and deal with this insane stuff and obliterate your own identity and sense of self, or you can be totally excommunicated and lose everyone who cares about you and start over and then have to like explain to everyone what you've been doing this whole time.
Scientology is such a easy version of that, because it's like, you start by being like, oh, you're stressed? Here, take this stress test. And it's like, how do you go from, I want to see how stressed I am, to the, you know, fucking volcano god and stuff like that. And you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that they can still recruit new members. Yeah. With as much information as out there. Like
So what kind of music were you into? Like that you were like looking to like make and things like that?
Man, I so I actually grew up in a gospel church.
Yeah.
My
like all the good ones.
Yeah, my mom was actually like walking. There was like very much no religion in our house and our family. They had made a sort of agreement about that, very intellectual agreement. And then my mom was walking past this church, this gospel church, and heard the music and like literally stopped in her tracks and did a beeline and went in there. And we were the only white family in the church for many years, and she was in the choir and is an amazing singer, just a beautiful, intuitive singer. And I would go to gospel practice with her. And there was a guy who was the choir leader there who the hymnal is called Lift Every Voice and Sing. And it's actually like based on like slave spirituals. Yeah. And so like all the blues and all those things are so tied into that style. And then like New Orleans style singing and jazz and Zydeco and all that stuff was in there. But my dad was also a big like just obsessive music fan. Like my mom loves music too, but like my dad is like we would just stay up late at night and he'd be like, haven't I played you this? I fucking failed you as a father. And like, run into the other room and get stuff.
My children are destined for that
100%. Yes. It's already happening. It's like the only thing good about being a parent. But like, that's not true. Sorry, in case my children listen. But that was like our prime sort of bonding thing. So tons of like Talking Heads, Paul Simon, Steely Dan, like all that stuff. And he also was really big into world music, like Afro pop and stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so I got an extremely eclectic background for that. I feel super lucky about that. Yeah. At the time that I had decided, I was thinking about maybe I want to do this. I got really into like female singer-songwriters and stuff. So I had all the songbooks for like Ani DeFranco. And I was very earnest and like I had a lot of feelings. But no, my mom bought me a guitar when I was how old was I? I think I was also 12 or 13. Very fertile year for me apparently. Yeah. But I and in her infinite wisdom, she knew that if I went the traditional route, like that if she got me like lessons with someone who was going to try to make me practice scales and all that kind of shit, I was just not going to do it. Yeah. So she knew this guy, she was a teacher, and this other guy at the school played guitar, and she was like, hey, can you, Mr. Joe? And she was like, can you do lessons? He was like, yeah, sure. And the first one, he said, listen, we're not going to do scales. We're not going to do this. Yeah. What's the song you like on the radio? Yes. And I said, Closing Time by Semisonic. And he was like, fantastic. It's 3 chords. Yeah. And they're the chords that are the basis of everything. And so he taught me how to play that song. And I was like, oh my God. And then I was fucking hooked after that. And was like a lot of self-taught and everything. But yeah, I started writing songs pretty young too, and was like, that's great, playing at coffee shops and all that sort of thing. So I definitely saw myself as like, as like a singer-songwriter, artist type person. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, but I never practiced a ton on the guitar. Like I learned enough to like accompany myself. Yeah, but what I maybe regret about not going to Berklee is I think I never really believed that my voice was an instrument, and then coming to Nashville too, I was like, I can't hang with these people. Like I had to have someone who basically acted as like a translator. Yeah. And I didn't like believe in my own songs because people would be like, what key is that? And I'd be like, shit. Yeah.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I didn't know.
Capo 3 and I'm playing a G.
Yeah. And then luckily I had a couple of people who were like, your songs are fucking great. Like just you tell me what you want it to sound like and I'll make them do it.
Yeah, for sure. Did some work while I was at Berklee helping with auditions and advising and stuff like that because like I was good and so they liked to send me on things. Also, I have this like weird penchant for ending up on councils of things. People like for me to be in a decision making capacity, and like I'm not gonna fucking lie. I like it. Yeah. Like, but also I don't always want to.
A frustrated critic.
Yeah, but also I don't always want to do it. No. And
I want people to listen to my opinions, but I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Why do you think I have a podcast?
Do you need a co-host? That's really why I'm here.
But the president of Berklee had like a great thing to say at one point when we were like launching these like audition help things. And it was, he said, and he's right, that if we only went by technical prowess.
Mm-hmm.
John Lennon doesn't get into Berkeley. Bob Dylan doesn't get into Berkeley. Like all these things that there is so much teachable about that. And even there was a guy who, this could be urban myth, but he was allegedly the highest paid faculty person at the college. And he was in the composition department and taught music history because like he was great at teaching music history and everybody had to take it. So like may as well get the guy who's going to do it right. But he would say about that thing too, like technique can be taught. You can spruce something up, but if there is no inspiration, like then there's what's the point? And but to your point of saying like feeling that way, like it would be better if institutions like that did a better job of fostering that thing.
Yeah.
This podcast is about you, right?
You know, I actually often feel like it's a personal goal of mine to ask other people more questions about themselves, because I think when you are an extrovert, as I am, I still don't. I'm shocked to hear you say that you're an introvert, but like it's easy to
I have
get
a timer.
caught up saying all those things.
I have a timer, is what it is. Like I can do this for a certain amount of time, and then after that, it's like
Then you need a nap.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I'm that person. The tagline of this podcast, the thing that ends it, has turned out to be: remember, the best answer to a question is usually another question. And for a podcast called Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know, that's a great way to end something like that.
That's a great way.
Being someone who tangents hard, there is no way to not do like why? Like if we're talking about it, I'm gonna continue down this way. Why cut it off? Outside of having wanted to ask about you staging with Ottolenghi, which is the real question. The only question I want to know about that is, are there any more people who have great, beautiful fine dining cookbooks that people know what their name looks like on a book but don't know anything about what they do than him?
That is a great question. I don't know. You know what's funny is like, okay, so his books were very, very transformational for me in the way that I cook. And like, you know, obviously Amanda and I have a lot of similarities in like the sort of milieu that we came up in, and the food styles and stuff. And so I think the biggest shift was not needing to add excessive amounts of fat to everything to make it taste good. You know, like I was like, oh damn, you can just use like citrus and herbs and all these things, and it can still like feel good. And there aren't really enough things I can say about the way that like those books shaped how I cook, and I started getting into them before I actually started cooking professionally. Oh, cool. I was really like, you know, in my 20s and had really a core group of like just super rad girlfriends. We actually had a supper club, and like every Monday night we would cook for each other elaborately, and then go dance our asses off at the Monday night dance party. And so it was like, that was a big sort of, you know, lean in thing for me too. And I was a server forever, a server and a host and all these other things. And then,
do you think that sorry, I'm gonna sidetrack you, because that's a whole thing too. Like,
tangent.
Do you think that being,
can you get a button like they have on the Howard Stern show, like bah, 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 like it's like tangent time?
Well, no, this is a relevant tangent. Like how important do you think it is for chefs to have some front of house experience? Where on the scale do you fall on that? Because I don't know what I think. I want to think that it's important, that it transforms, especially people that like are going to own a restaurant or things. And like, you know, because it's always the chef's name that's on the place. But they are in charge of it. They are, you know, they are ultimately to some degree in charge of the front of house.
Let me put it this way. I think that there are different kinds of restaurants and different kinds of experiences that you go there to have.
Let me rephrase the question. The main thing I do want to actually talk about for real about you is Juniper Green. Like I've been like exploring the idea as we've been talking of being like, I don't need to fucking blow by blow through your culinary history to like talk about this thing. But how do you think that having done front of house for like a considerable amount of time, enormously important. Yeah. So for you, it is enormously important. Yeah.
Well, and I think, you know, as I have, you know, gotten to a point in my career and also like just my life where I, you know, so many people I think end up places that they never intended. So much of people's careers are sort of like a process of elimination or almost like a series of like happy accidents or whatever.
Yeah.
Or unfortunate events, depending on who you're talking to, I guess. But like when I've looked at the things that have lit me up and have drawn me in and that I've gone into professionally or personally even, it's like human connection is the thing always. So
Sure.
it's like
Yeah.
with music, I did love to sit in my room and write songs, but the shit that I loved was singing with other people and doing harmonies and like, you know, the collaboration of it. And, you know, my mom is a painter. So like she is a very solo, also an introvert, but she's a very solo, almost like monastic creator, right? And she absorbs all these inputs and is able to run them through a filter that is uniquely hers, and that's fucking beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think essential, but
Sure.
that's not me. And so it actually took me a while to sort of like understand where my creativity fits in the world, because I had actually, my dad is the same. He's an architect, and he still draws everything by hand and is like an encyclopedic mind of this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that was my example. And I was like, but I always have just loved people and being around them. And I'm sort of, you know, I think that's what I was drawn to even having this conversation, because I think I can just make friends with anyone. I'm like the person who gets out of an Uber and I've like exchanged numbers with the driver and I'm like, I hope everything goes well with your pregnancy and like that kind of stuff. Like, and I just, that's the joy of my life. And so that's what I loved about front of house was, you know, you just get to be like an observer of so much life and like human experience, and you get to just have these like moments with people. And there's no expectation of it having to go anywhere, but you can still have a very meaningful exchange with someone, right? But so like, I very much believe that like, you know, hospitality exists to ease the way for people. It's like, I can't remember where I heard this phrase. It's not original, but couldn't tell you who can. But it was like, our job is to move boulders out of the road, right? Like people, like life is fucking hard. It's really hard and it's exhausting. And like, you know, especially I think in food and restaurants, it's like one of the few indulgences and pleasures that people allow themselves. And yes, you and I really love these sort of like temples of gastronomy and whatever, and that's great. That's like going to MoMA or something. Yeah. But, and that's part of why I think the Bear is really special, is because there's just as much value and heart and meaning in making a fucking great sandwich as there is in like that other stuff. And so this is why I started to say like there's different kinds of restaurants and different kinds of experiences, because like I think there are chefs who are solo creators. I think there are places that you go to sort of like sit at the altar. There's places that you go, there's like, this chef can do something that no other chefs can do. And like, I don't need to be right at his restaurant. You know what I mean? Like the experiences that have been the most meaningful to me, and what I would argue are better, are where you can feel that everything is an active offering. Yeah. Everything about the food and the presentation and the space itself and the staff and everything is about creating this, you know, transcendent experience for you, this moment in time. And like, that's why I'm like super nerdy about Danny Meyer and like, you know, those kind of stories. Cause it's like,
do you read the Will Guidara book?
Is that Radical Hospitality?
Unreasonable.
No, I haven't yet, but I want to for sure. Yeah. And I will say too, I said this sort of around COVID time that like, I think especially like food and cooking, it's not to say it's untouched by technology and AI and all these other things that are coming, but it's like, it's such a uniquely human transaction. And it can be absolutely like look at a diner, you know what I mean? Like those places can be as meaningful into a community as a church. Yeah. You know, like, and I grieve Sweet 16th Bakery. Oh yeah. Right? Like that, to have a place like that where they had mostly the same menu for however many years, but they knew everybody in that neighborhood. They knew their dogs' names. They knew their kids. They knew where they went to on vacation. Like they knew who was sick. Like they just were incredible. And I could not go there. I moved out of the neighborhood and I could not go there for a year and a half and come back and they would be like, oh, hey, it's so great to see you. Welcome back in.
Yeah.
Da, 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 da. That's a very long-winded, which is my personal brand. I think you can taste the difference. I think you have a more memorable, meaningful experience when the focus is not on look at me and how special I am.
Yeah.
You know?
Uh-huh. I mean, that goes to the same thing we're talking about.
And music too is the same way, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can tell when an artist is generous, when they're like, they might be fucking so tired of playing this song, but they don't let you know that ever.
Yeah. And also, I mean, that's especially, you know, the food ways that you come from and stuff, those experiences. And we were talking before we started recording about like things like a jambalaya being like just the thing to eat at a day. Like it is about the day. It is not about that. And think of how many people, like Italian cooking is the sucker for this, right? Everybody's grandmother's sauce is the best sauce. And 90% of them taste like nothing, you know? But like there is sense memory associated with that. And it's just going to be better.
Yep.
Like to you, it's just going to be better. There is so much more tied up in that than the thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, especially if you have a shit memory as I do. The sense memory stuff is essential. I mean, it's like, it's literally woven into my identity. Cause like I've sort of joked recently that I feel like, you know, some people aren't sentimental about stuff.
Yeah.
I'm very sentimental about stuff, in part because I sort of joke that it's like I have horcruxes because like this memory does not exist without this thing.
Yeah.
If I don't have it in front of my face and I'm not touching it, like it's gone.
Yeah.
I don't remember it at all.
I know people like that.
Yeah, I'm very, and it's like borderline scary a little bit, you know, like I feel that so intensely as a parent now because like these things will happen and I'm like, holy shit, this is miraculous. Like this is the first time X. And then I'm like, am I gonna remember this? I hope I don't forget. And I'm also bad at journaling and all those things. So I'm like, I should write that down. And I don't, you know, and I take a bajillion pictures, but like how many times do you sit there and like actually look at the pictures you took from 3 years ago?
But that's the thing, right? Is like I talked to somebody else about taking photos and being like framing it from a standpoint of like having lost a number of their friends and realizing they didn't have pictures with any of their friends and stuff. And like, it's interesting that you say that because I was going to say something along the lines of like, for everything that is detrimental about, you know, the smartphone is like, maybe is having like a camera of that, you know, power the best thing because you can capture that, like, and especially in parenting, like I'm not a parent yet, but like that way of being like, I'll get to capture all of it, you know, like there will be so much more of that.
But I also feel like this is another thing, is like back to the sort of scarcity thing. When you had 28 pictures at your disposal, you're a little more judicious on which ones you take. And now I take like 15, you know, and they're all shit. And I think that's true of a lot of things, like, you know, like group photos. Like there's something valuable just in having documented something. Yeah. But like when I look at some of like the photos that like I grew up, my mom just had like a big ass like Rubbermaid tub full of printed out photos from all the eras. There is no rhyme or reason to it. And it was like one of my favorite things to do, to just like dig through that shit and see all these different eras of things. But like, yes, it is amazing to be able to have that stuff at your disposal, but it also takes you out of it sometimes. You never just pull out your phone and take a picture and then put it away.
That's fair.
Yeah, I do feel like the negatives outweigh the positives.
That's an interesting perspective. I mean, that is the most interesting thing about doing this, is like, as much as I like great photography and stuff, that there's something about being like I'm so glad that I have friends who have kids who have like just like everything, like for memory's sake. So I feel that way. And then you describe that way and I'm like, maybe you're right. Like I can, you know. This
is sort of a stretch to tie it to this, but like the thing about curating, about the role of a critic, right? Yeah. Part of the role of a critic is to curate something. And that's what I don't do. I remember photo albums growing up and going through those and leafing through them, and the fact that they are touchable makes you interface with them in a different way. Yeah. You can stumble upon them in a different way. And like the only equivalent that I would say I really have for that now is when the phone's like, on this day, 16 years ago, you did this thing. And actually, I love that shit. And it's a little bit weird how, like, you know, baked in it is, but it'll be like, at the beach, and it'll show you like 30. I don't. This is my iPhone voice apparently, but it'll be like, and it's got music and transitions,
and it's right. It's the
delightful.
right music
Yes,
for
it
like
is.
the
It's
thing.
weird.
Like, it's like at the beach, and then like you get nothing but surf rock
in the kitchen. Or it's stuff like that, and it's so those things are lovely, but that's the closest I get. I don't have any. I think I have like a small handful of framed photos of my kids, and guess what? They're the professionally taken ones.
Sure, yeah.
They're like, I paid money for that shit.
Yeah.
It's going on the wall. But yeah.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that like that experience is how you ended up having Juniper Green as opposed to a fine dining company, or like
which experience?
The idea of talking about like the human
connection
part. Yeah,
I would say arguably the reason I ended up eventing, as you say, is because I
like words, but they don't always come out right.
No, I mean, yeah. But when you talk as fast as we do, it's just because you're gonna have a couple clams that come out from time to time.
Right.
But no, I helped open a couple of wine bars, like from like gravel floors, and that was an incredible experience. I had so much fun, but I was also like, there's no break in this, like the literally the very specific thing I said is like, I don't want to own anything that has hours of operation.
Yeah.
I don't want to own anything that has a front door.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I do that, then it's like, it doesn't matter if you have the business to support it. You have to have at least enough people there to meet demand. You can't just like wake up one day and be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Right.
And you kind of can't really do that with what I do either, but like there are seasons of rest, right?
Yeah.
Like there's slow times, and that's okay. But I think too, it was like, I liked the idea that there would be a lot more variety as well, because I do think you can innovate in a restaurant, but like once you've put your shingle on the door and you're like, this is the concept, like, you can't fuck with it that much, or people are going to be like, what is this place? And they're going to stop going.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen time and time again. Yeah. But I also saw at the time that I was like, okay, I'm ready to own something, the number of like insanely talented and like well-financed people that I saw just go to shit.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's
staggering.
the thing. Yeah.
It was like, but it was like this, it was this specific moment in time in Nashville, and I think it evened out, and now it's happening again. It's like, and so you have just this very, very limited window of time to capture attention and create an audience. And if you don't hit it, you're toast. And I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, of course.
So, but
nobody wants to do that. And some of that is like, is built in self-awareness, right? Like this podcast is sort of emblematic of the idea that like to some degree, like the fact that I'm doing it and not still talking about doing it
major, by the way.
A big
Congrats.
deal.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is based on the fact that like, because this happens to me with music as well, where it's like, especially like instrumental music. I've, written some pretty decent instrumental songs, but then I'll be in an elevator and I'll hear a song and I'll go, yeah, but if it might sound like this, I don't want to do it. Like if it's going to end up being elevator music, like fuck it, And I think that. But
it might, and then you fix it.
Sure, there is always that, but to me, I get the same spiritual vibe out of, we both know that the numbers are like, when you tell anyone the number, like what the percentages are.
I think it's like a 90%.
Yeah, it is.
Rate.
It is that high, and it's like, that alone, if you appreciate it all, is enough to make you want to vomit.
100%. Well, and I think that's the other thing too that sucks about where we are with Nashville is like, there's no mom and pop place anymore. Like that's not an option. Like you can't just, like I think about some of the places that I love the most, like Moss Tacos would not exist at all.
No.
And she really was like at the forefront of the whole like food truck thing. She was the first one I was even aware of in Nashville. I'm sure there were, like white girl. I'm sure there were plenty on Nolensville Road that I wasn't aware of.
Of
but
course,
like, but yeah, and then she moved into like kind of a sketchy part of town and like painted everything herself and whatever. Like you just can't do that anymore. And you look at somewhere like Josephine closing down after 10 years with this incredibly loyal following in the bougiest neighborhood with like the most people with money who could keep it going. I feel like they could have easily gone another 10 years.
Yeah.
They weren't going to pay rent. And it was like, the combination of, I mean, I'm totally projecting, but like the combination of like rent and food costs going up, it's like the margin's already ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's so fucking hard. It's like the hardest job for the lowest pay other than like nurses, maybe. You know what I mean? It's like teachers.
Yeah, nurses and teachers.
Yeah, like why would you do that? Shit gets in your blood. And I think that's why. Oh, you know what? Here's a tangent we never finished. Back to the
I think you and I just need to start a podcast.
I mean, I told you I came in here to pitch myself as your co-host, and I'm not fucking around. But like some of the experiences that I had in the sort of like purgatory again, it wasn't post COVID. It was post like ultimate COVID. It was like, but it was a dip in the waves or whatever they call it. The times that I got to be part of a gathering in that time was so fucking powerful, because I'm gonna come back to the curated thing. It forced people to edit. A wedding that would have had 200 people had 50 or 20, and it was like, who actually really needs to be here? Like, let's get ruthless with that shit. You're not just gonna be in a receiving line and like chasing your drink around all night. You're with the people who matter the most to you and living it, right? But I had this realization that like people who work in specifically, like chefs get rock star status, chefs get cool rock, whatever, like line pirate shit. But like being a server is just sort of like universally agreed to be like a shit gig. You know what I mean? Like it's disposable, it's dispensable, it's whatever. You can't not feel that when you're doing it, right? No one talks about the insane amount of skill and like intuition and instinct and like energy that it takes to do that job well. So like
the best one's interface. I have this like image of, like some shitty 80s sci-fi movie where like two images like come together into one, and then they change color when they like match up exactly. And I think that there are a number of things like that. I used to referee in a sports league, and it was like a real-time game. And I used to think that my best games as a referee were the ones where like I was like in it, like I was interfaced with the game in the right way. And I think that's that way about serving too, where it's like you get like interfaced with the client, and you
get in a flow and you get the right.
You just like find the right puzzle piece interlocking, and it works. But like you have to have instinct for it, and you have to give a shit about the customer and the experience and all that. But like I remember saying to someone at that time, like, if you have the ability to hold space for people, and the intuition and the care and the whatever to do that, to like create a moment where they don't want for anything, where like you have anticipated their needs and provided them before they have to look around, because in the same way that like looking at your phone takes you out of a moment with another person, looking for your fork or needing more water or all that stuff, like it can diminish a connection. So like that is a radical public service. Like that is a foundation point of community. We have never needed to connect with each other more. Yeah, for sure. And there have never been more hurdles in the face of that than there are. And so like I do think servers and hospitality people, there's a reason they call them essential workers. You know what I mean? Like it's not just virtue signaling. And I wish people recognized, like I've heard other people joke in the industry, like they should almost like conscript people into it like a draft, because like I think all of our society would be drastically better if everyone had to work as a server for a few months. Yeah, absolutely. Or a cook or anything like that. And ultimately, this is why I think the iPhone is not worth the camera, because it does make it so much easier to disappear from each other and to have this like manufactured sense of community and connection and whatever. But like, it's the lowest lift thing. Like you can substitute like sending a meme for like having a conversation. I'm certainly guilty of it. Yeah, of course. Yeah. But like, but yeah, certainly as an ADD person, it's like the ultimate slot machine. Yeah, for sure. Like, I definitely struggle with that a little bit. I remember seeing an ad for like a dumb phone. It's like,
You can use your smartphone like for work during the day, and then like have basically like a Nokia.
Yeah.
Again, and I was like, that might be what I need. You know,
I know people who have done that, or like there are apps that will turn your phone like into that will change the whole interface
there's
of it
apps for that?
to be to just like
snap.
stupid it up.
Okay, well,
to reduce it. Yeah,
I'm gonna write that down.
I wish I could do it. Like I wish I could be that person that's like, I'm gonna, fucking little house on the prairie, like,
A homesteader.
yeah, a homesteader with no connection to the world. In my worst moments, I imagine I could do that. Be like, 100%. I'm just gonna get rid of everything. And
my husband was like ready to go. Like when early COVID came, he was like, "This is the excuse I've needed to go off the grid." Because I was like, he's just like, I hate people in general. So like, I remember we watched the the like Paul Bettany version of the Unabomber movie.
Oh yeah,
and they like when they zoomed in on his little cabin in the middle of the woods, he was like, that looks fucking great. That's what I want to do. And I was like, what? And he was just like, yeah, that looks great. No one's going to bug me.
God, the intro to this podcast is going to be like something along the lines of being like, well, you want to hear something that has nothing to do with what you think that the guest topic should be about? Or how very little of this can it be? It makes me want to ask you, because I think I'll get in trouble for not asking, how excited were you to do our wedding?
Oh my God. I was so excited.
I thought of it because you were talking about like needing to, people needing to like pare down the size of their weddings and things like that and stuff. And like that we were only doing 100 people. We invited like 130, counting on 100 being the number that would show up. And we ended up like right around there. And that had to do with the fact that it was going to be a wedding for 100 people that was going to be curated in a way that was going to be like having 300 people at this wedding and doing the things we want to do are not possible.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what you were saying a little while ago that made me think of it, and I was going to say something about the idea of how much bad wedding food there is out there, and that being why we hired you.
Oh, let me tell you something. Like, I say this actually to couples a lot. I think part of the reason, I mean, yes, it's very difficult to make quality, delicious food for that many people.
Sure.
Go and like to go and all the conditions. I mean, like the number of variables and like Murphy's Law kind of things that are working against you having good food is very high.
Well, it's sort of like whose leg do I have to hump to get more venues to have real kitchens?
Well, like certainly.
Like is that the biggest bane of your existence? Like that everything is
no, I mean like there's enough you have to menu design for it, right?
Sure.
But like it'd be great. It would be
we're
great.
already tangenting from this,
Listen,
but like
it would be
that's
delightful.
the thing. It's like you say that because you know how to do it better. Like you know how to be like, yeah, this has like an ice maker and you know like two fucking stainless steel tables.
I like to think so.
And there's that, but like if you could strip away your like MacGyver-ish knowledge of how to make a wedding come off that way, it would be like, well, no, could you just build these venues with kitchens?
Well, I mean, I think, but that's the other thing too, is like they know that you can actually build a mobile kitchen in a tent with like you can rent full ass like ovens and deep fryers and all the stuff that you would have in a kitchen.
Sure.
But the venue's not having to pay for that.
Yeah,
and they don't have to put a grease. So I get why they do it.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, grease traps are the
maybe
the hinge of
the most niche and least exciting part of the podcast. Anyway, no one gives a shit about how catering comes together. I get that. But
no, that's the whole point, is that's what I want to talk about.
I think, this is back to like why there's so much bad wedding food. I think it's both because it is so difficult to just pull off catered food in general. But, and two, because let's be real, most people say they care about food and they do when they're paying for themselves. But for whatever reason, people seem to think that catered food is going to be less expensive. It's like they think there's going to be some sort of like Costco bulk buying discount. Sure. Yeah. And you're like, no, I'm literally like building a restaurant for you in a field and making you a custom menu of just what you want. Yeah. So no, it's not going to be cheaper. But also, I think people are in it. I am seeing some movement here. I'm seeing some change. But I think for the longest time, people solve for like the lowest common denominator. Yeah. They're like, I have this group of cousins coming in from Kentucky, and God forbid there's not something on the menu that they don't know what it is.
Yeah, of course.
And they see that as, so I'm really obsessed with Priya Parker. She wrote The Art of Gathering.
Yeah.
And she talks about how like a host is essentially a benevolent dictator. And like it is their job to set the tone of what everything is. And so like if literally the whole point is to celebrate you as people and the shit that you care about and what you like, I don't think it is actually hospitality to serve only like the people who are the least adventurous. Yeah. And I have actually seen experiences where couples like took a little bit of a risk with me. Yeah. And we made something kind of more personal, and they knew it was going to be a slight challenge to some of those people, and those very same people that they were worried about liking it were the ones who came and said, this is some of the best food I've ever had. Yeah. Right? And
I'm sure that happened at our wedding.
Yeah.
But the thing about entering into that though is that we didn't give a fuck about those people.
I know.
You know, it was sort of like, because like if we didn't do that part right, I mean, like we told you upon first meeting, it's like other than like a couple of things. Yeah. There is nothing more important about this wedding than what the food is going to be like.
And I was very excited and also very nervous. If only for the fact that like, it's like when even in restaurant world, like somebody else another restaurant person comes in to have dinner at your place, like you just want to blow it out of the water for them. Sure. Like, you know, when someone who is in your industry or cares as much about the same things as you do, like you want to honor that, and you want to, it's like that's your people, you know, like you want to kill it. And so like I knew from the jump like what enormous trust Amanda specifically was putting in my hands to feed her family, you know, like that's such a huge part of her like upbringing and stuff.
It was just, I mean, but it was really just a matter of being like, we could not be made to look like fools in that moment.
Oh,
like
for
of ourselves.
Sure.
Like that is my view on that. Is
yes,
like,
absolutely.
Like, if this isn't good, people are going to be like, would have expected her to be in a wedding dress in the catering kitchen.
Oh, for sure. Like, but all of this is to say, I think like it's a similar mentality to bad comedy, right? Like bad TV shows where they like over explain the joke just in case somebody doesn't. It ruins it for everybody.
It's true.
You know, and I think that's how you end up with like quote unquote wedding chicken. Yeah. Because people like want to play it safe, and they're even bored with it, but they're like, well, these are the options. Yeah. And so it gets a bad rap, and like and I say that all the time. I'm like, look, give it a shot. You know, like what's the worst thing that could happen? It's like, it's dinner. The worst thing that could happen is that guy didn't really like it. And he has to eat like less of the items that are available. And then maybe he gets a burger on the way home. Like, you know what I mean?
I think every episode of this podcast has had me say this in it, that a person is only, you know, made up of the sum of the experiences they've had up until that moment. And it's like, there are people that think of it as an afterthought. Like dinner is something that just has to happen because,
oh my God, I had a bride actually say that to me. She goes, this is the lowest thing on my list of priorities. And I was like, then why are you talking to me?
Yeah, right.
Because I am not cheap. You know, if you care more about all these other things, then like we should just save each other some time and hang up now. But yeah, I do. All of that is to say, like I'm sure so many of your listeners are planning catered events right now. But like, you know, I think have a little faith, you know, in your people. Like give them a chance to enjoy something cool, and like people come at it from a good place. They actually think they want everyone who came to be comfortable. They want them to feel considered and cared for and all these other things. And that's great. And I would say the exception to that is like, if you have not exception, like if you have people who have literal like allergies, dietary things, whatever, like if you're not solving for those people, that's shitty. I just think that.
No, sure.
Other than that, I think make it something that you're excited about and bring people along for the journey, because then like you're showing them generosity and giving them a really memorable experience. You know, versus like I had a bride, I ended up not working with her, but she wanted like chicken and broccoli and like sweet potato wedges. Yeah. for a plated dinner. And I was like, listen, I'm going to eat that shit 3 times a week. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But like, it's like not going to look good
Yeah.
on the plate. It's going to get cold immediately.
Yeah.
And like, why are you paying more for that? Like, I just don't understand it. And I was like trying to, and she literally sent me a link to an Instagram recipe video, my own recipe. And was like, these are the good sweet potatoes that we want, but just without all this other stuff. So she's like, take off all the stuff that makes it you.
Yeah, right.
And makes it like a signature thing that you do.
Yeah.
And just give us the like basically the oven fries. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think this is gonna work out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You know?
true. One thing that I thought that you did really well.
This is my favorite part of the podcast.
Yeah,
so
I bet.
far.
Yeah.
Adore me.
Yeah, here's where I glorify you. Is that we did the rehearsal dinner in your space.
Yeah.
And then had the wedding offsite, and they were both equally as badass meals.
Oh,
Like in a way that,
that's a nice
you were
thing
able
to
to
hear.
like cook them
Yeah.
and then just bring them upstairs as opposed to like having to go elsewhere and bring
Yeah.
it and it be good. And,
Well, again, you trusted us, and
Yeah.
you know, and you were like, do your thing. That's what I really appreciated that about Amanda's. Like, she was obviously very vocal about like the things that she cared about or that
Yeah.
wanted to do, but she was also like, do your thing. And I will say, as a public service announcement, everyone, if you hire creative people, you are all 100% of the time, you are going to get the best result when you do that.
yeah,
You know
of
what I
course.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
I never understand why people hire, especially like expensive creatives, you know, like the best branding guy or the best whatever, and then just micromanage the shit out of
Yeah.
them. And you're like, this doesn't even look like his stuff anymore. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
why would you do that? I don't get it.
Yeah. Going back to rich people versus poor people in that aspect.
I promise I'm not trying to espouse like an eat the rich situation. Like it's complicated. Anyway.
No, I'm about to like eat the poor situation here. Is I think in creativity, a lot of times when you take a budgetary cut for somebody, they tend to be the micromanaging people.
For sure.
Like that happens in like making records all the time.
Yep.
Where it's like, what's your budget? Well, that's less than what I want to do this for. But you know what? I think this will be great. Like, I think it's a good fit. Let's do it. And then you get down the road into like comping vocals, and it's like they want all these changes, and you're like, this isn't worth it. And the people that can buzzword of like curate trust, tend to be the people that are the happiest when you just do a thing.
Yeah. There's somebody who was telling me about like one of my friends is like this amazing manager. She's like very, very high level at this like corporate thing, and she calls it a garden plot. So she's like, I give my employees a garden plot, and I'm like, what, here are the gates around it, and here's what we need to harvest out of it, and beyond that, do whatever the fuck you want, and like as long as like the deliverables are there, then how you get there is fine. And so I was like, oh, I love that, because I think I need those things for sure.
I mean, yes. I get that. Yeah. Also, what have we learned in the past decade or so, if not that like forcing people into systems that don't work for them?
Yeah,
produces,
but we don't.
like,
but we have not learned that.
Well, no, I mean,
but we do, and then we forget it.
Yeah, some people are trying to learn that.
Yeah,
in their best moments. Yeah, best moments and worst moments.
Well, it's like everyone was like, "Oh, we can do work from home, and it actually works fine." And in some cases, works so much better for people. Yeah, and then like the minute that it wasn't required, everyone's like, "Come back to the office," and you're like, "What?" Not everyone did that, obviously.
No,
but
of
it's
course.
like, a substantial number of people did. Yeah. And it's interesting how tightly I think we cling to the notion of should and the notion of normal.
And no one asked the question.
When it doesn't exist.
And no one asked the question for what. And these are the problems with why when I get put on councils of things, I'm always the contrarian, because I always like asking for
why?
What. You know?
Like a toddler, like, but why though?
Yeah. And and the reason is because toddlers haven't had things beaten into them that are, that are just useless or overly traditional is a bad word for something business-wise.
Yeah.
But historical. No, that's not even the right word. Some sort of bullshit. We'll just go with bullshit being what it is sometimes.
Status quo.
Yeah, status quo is the word I was looking for. Well, we've been doing this for a while, and we could probably do this for many more hours. But this has been an episode of Tangenting with Molly. And so...
when you say tangenting with Molly, it makes it sound like that was all on my dime.
No, for sure. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It was a blast.
Yeah. And there you have it. That was my chat with Molly Martin of Juniper Green. If you want to find anything else out about Juniper Green that we didn't cover, you can hit up their Instagram. It is at Juniper Green Kitchen, and their website is junipergreen.kitchen. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for being here. We're going to keep it going. Lots of great guests coming up. Lots of things I'm excited about. Please remember, as every podcaster tells you, which is something I say every time. So now I'm every podcaster. Oh boy. Please like, subscribe, share, tell your friends that there are interesting chats out there that are happening. I'm here for everybody. If you're looking on the internet for the show or me, you can hit up the Instagram for the show. That is at Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know. I am at Matt O'Donnell on Instagram. If you have a burning question or comment in your heart, you can email the show, which is emailing me. That is Matt O'Donnell Wants to Know at gmail.com. All right, that'll do it for this time. Be sure and take care of yourself. And remember, the best answer to a question is usually another question. See ya.